The Iowa straw poll. Who's a no-show? But what does it even mean? And special thanks to you, Senator Rand Paul. I'm sleeping a little bit sounder tonight. I'm Randall Terry. This is Voice of Resistance.
Those who forsake the law praise the wicked. Those who uphold the law resist them. Welcome to the Voice of Resistance. Here's your host, Randall Terry.
We're going to talk about the Iowa caucus in just a minute, but first, I want to thank Rand Paul for just saying no to the Patriot Act. Now, what's almost funny is that they allegedly are not collecting the metadata right now, the metadata. I just want to laugh. I want to publicly laugh. Can you imagine with me some janitor at 12:01 walking into a room and going, all right, I'm pulling the plug, people. Here it goes. All right, we've just jeopardized billions of dollars worth of equipment and software. We're going to not listen to a single thing. We're not going to collect a single bit of data because the law expired. Just think about it with me. Our government is being led, arguably, by criminals. People who have defied the U.S. Constitution, right? Broken their oath of office. Lord help us. So anyway, they're still collecting the data. I'll bet dollars to donuts. And they'll never face prosecution. And they'll probably make the law retroactive to cover the hind ends of anybody who is illegally tapping our phones right now. But I'm glad that Rand Paul took the stand. And maybe one day, please God, let it happen. Maybe one day, Americans will wake up and say, we are not going to let our government spy on us anymore. The end. Now, for those of you who have been duped by the machine, we were laughing off the air. Can you imagine being so powerful as some of these media people? Don't mind me, people. I'm just your everyday media mogul. I decide what you see and hear. So anyway, we've got these media moguls that are feeding us this incessant lie that without these tools, our government can't fight terrorism. It's not true. They didn't stop the brother bombers in Boston. They didn't stop the guy who beheaded the woman in Oklahoma. They didn't stop that random assailant in New York City who attacked the cops. I mean, do I have to go on? They didn't stop the Fort Hood shooter. All of these Muslims, okay, all of them reading social media, all of them had the data right there that they could have looked at, but no. All they have to do is they have to use a good old-fashioned, ready, search warrant. They go to a judge, not a secret court. They go to a judge and say, we suspect this person or these people of criminal activity, and we need a warrant to tap their phone. We need a warrant to go into their apartment and search for certain things. We need a warrant to look at what internet sites they're going to, if they're looking at jihadist sites. See, the Constitution allows the authorities to do what needs to be done to solve crimes or to protect us, but the Constitution says that they have to get a warrant specifying the items that they're looking for. Specifying. What they're doing now is they're just casting this massive net over all of us. I mean, think about it. When we used to, as children, read books or sit in classrooms and hear about the evils of the Soviet Union, Das Kapital, we were told one of the things that was so horrible about them is that every single phone was bugged. You could even, some of you who are movie buffs remember that whenever they would pick up a phone in Russia, the presumption was that the phone was bugged. And we considered this a horrific crime against human freedom. And it was. Our government has become the bad guy. Our government is tapping all our phones now. Father God, help us. Now, the tragedy, even worse than that, is that there are people, some who are watching this program right now, who are prepared to surrender their freedom in exchange for security. I believe it was Benjamin Franklin. Please forgive me if I'm wrong. Those of you who are American history buffs can correct me if you need to. I believe it was Benjamin Franklin who said, those who would exchange their liberty for security deserve neither. And friend, that ultimately is what will happen. If we create a government that is big enough to take care of everything we need, they can take everything we have. If we create a government that is big enough to spy on everyone, then all of us will surrender our freedom and we will become the servants, should I say the serfs, or even the slaves of Big Brother. So I applaud Rand Paul for doing what he is doing. And I hope that one day we wake up. In the meantime, let's talk about Rand Paul going to Iowa and who's not going to be there with him. I'll be right back.
You have two choices. I mean, you can try to raise your children by design, or you will raise them by default. There are no perfect parents. We're going to get it wrong sometimes. If we have a plan, we've got a better chance of getting it right in the long run.
There is something deep within the heart of every human being that longs for parental acceptance and approval. When does a boy become a man?
Get a group of guys around and ask them that question.
I don't think there's a certain age. Some men stay boys their whole life.
I would say, 16, 18 years old.
Wow, that's a good question.
When they get bar mitzvah?
Well, I think when he has a child. So I just became at 56, 56 years old.
Without the power of the Holy Spirit changing us and giving us power over our sin, we can't hope to be the dads that our kids need us to be.
Welcome back to the show. I'm going to look down at my computer once or twice because I've got some critical things that I want to quote to you. And as I discuss with you the Iowa straw poll and the Iowa caucus. Now, I was talking with somebody last night who is pretty adept at politics, pretty involved over the years, and they could not get their head around the Iowa straw poll, the Iowa caucus, what it means, what difference does it make. So I thought, wow, then I really need to discuss this with our viewers because it actually is critical, or it has been critical for the last couple of decades. First of all, let me explain the difference between the Iowa straw poll and the Iowa caucus. And I'll explain to you why both of them are important, and I'll look at the history of it for the last 20 years or maybe a little bit more than that. The Iowa straw poll happens in August, a year and 3 months ahead of the election. So the Iowa straw poll for the 2012 election was August of 2011. The Iowa straw poll for the 2008 election was August of 2007. Now, let me explain a few things about this. And believe me, it actually is important to you because it sometimes determines who's the next president. First of all, the Iowa straw poll is a Republican event. The Democrats do not participate. Did you hear what I just said? This is a Republican event. Second of all, it has no direct meaning, no legal bearing on who will win the caucus, who will win the nomination, or who will become president. Now let that just sink in for a minute, okay? The Iowa straw poll is a Republican event. Democrats don't participate. And it has no legal bearing on the Iowa caucus, which will happen in February or so of 2016. The Iowa straw poll happens in August. About 6 months later, the Iowa caucus. The Iowa caucus is where they determine who won that state's primary. So they have a primary caucus, not a primary election. Are you confused yet? And here's something to make matters even just a little more interesting. This is why it's important. Iowa, by law, by state law, will be the first state in the nation to have a primary. And New Hampshire, by law, will be second. These two states are so entrenched in their place in the body politic of America that it doesn't matter what Louisiana does, it doesn't matter what any state in the union does. Florida, I believe it was Florida, back in 2008, it was either 8 or 12, tried to jump ahead of Iowa and New Hampshire, and some of the candidates actually boycotted the entire process. They said, we're not doing it. It was a real slap down. My memory is that it was Florida. I do this show primarily without notes, people. There's just once in a while there's a leak in the treasure trove up here, malfunction, so I might misrecollect something. So, Iowa caucus in February of 2016, all right? And then the New Hampshire primary. But let's just focus on Iowa. So Iowa's first. Great. Iowa's going to have the first primary. It's a caucus primary. What's a caucus? Well, in an election with a secret ballot, which is what most of us participate in, you go into a little booth, you put a check by a name, or you push the little computer screen, or you flip the little lever, whatever voting mechanism you're using. And you cast a secret ballot, a secret vote for the one person who you want to win the primary, okay? And you get one vote, and you get one try, and you exit. In a caucus, people will go into a room. So if you're from the 4th precinct of Polk County, you gather with people from the 4th precinct of Polk County in Iowa. And you sit in a room. Everyone sees everyone. And the guy who's for Romney, let's roll back the tape to 2012 or 2008. So the guy that's for Romney sits over here. And the guy who's for whoever else is running that particular year sits over here. And the guy who's running for Santorum sits over here. And Newt Gingrich sits over here. And they all say to everyone in the room, come on, join me, join my candidate. We can win. We know that Newt Gingrich has a better grasp of foreign policy. No, Romney's got a better grasp of domestic economic policy, and that's what it means. And it's like an open horse trading. Everyone can see who everyone is sitting with. They go sit under the guy's name. And if your guy, if the person you like does not get 15% of the people in the room, then none of the votes count. And they have to either go home or go and be with somebody else. They have to move to another candidate. That's what a caucus is. Open horse trading. Open discussion. Everyone gets to see who it is that you voted for in the caucus. Now, I'm going to take a break. Remember, the Iowa caucus, which actually does determine the winner of the Iowa primary, is not the same thing as the Iowa straw poll. The straw poll is coming up in just 3 short months. It's a beauty pageant. Let's talk about it as a beauty pageant when we come back. And let's see who said, I'm not putting on the high heels and the bikini when we come back. Do you want to get America out of the hands of wicked and unjust men and women who are destroying the republic before our eyes, and put leadership back into the hands of righteous men and women so that we don't die as a nation? Well, you're talking about social revolution, and there are rules in social revolution. We can look at the victorious social revolutions of the past, such as the end of slavery, the end of child labor, women's voting rights, the end of segregation, and so much more, and learn from their victories. Look at their actions, their images, their rhetoric, their sacrifices, and their final fruit. We will send you this series that originally cost $129, 7 books for students, 1 teacher's guide, if you'll give a gift of any size and just pay for shipping and handling. Take advantage of it today. All right, let me go over with you the history of the Iowa straw poll to show you its significance in Republican elections. Now remember, the straw poll is a beauty pageant. It has no legal bearing. Well, then why would anyone do it? Why does anyone do a beauty pageant? To get your name out there, to get your face out there. We'll talk about that in a minute, okay? So the straw poll happens in August. The caucus will happen this winter in 2016, probably in February. And then the general election will happen in November of 2016. All right, to show you the significance of, let's just do the last 20 years. Actually, no, just for kicks, we'll start in 1988. Pat Robertson won the straw poll. Bob Dole won the Iowa caucus. George Bush the Elder won the primaries, won the nomination, and then he became the nominee, or rather he became the president, okay? Then for the 96 election, in August of 95, Bob Dole tied for first place with then Senator Phil Gramm from Texas. So in the straw poll, Dole got first place. Dole won the caucus in the winter, which had that was legally binding. He got the delegates. He also won the nomination to be the Republican candidate in 96. And then Bill Clinton won the election for president. That was his re-election. In the year 2000, George Bush the Younger, governor of Texas, won the straw poll. He won the caucus. He won the nomination. And he won the presidency. And then we'll do one more. Of course, they skipped the year when Bush was in office. They don't hold an event because this is a beauty pageant for Republicans. So 2004, there was no event. Then in August of 2007, Mitt Romney won the straw poll. Huckabee won the caucus. John McCain won the nomination. And Barack Obama won the presidency. That one was all over the place. Mitt Romney wins the straw poll. Mike Huckabee wins the Iowa caucus. McCain wins the nomination for the Republican Party. And Barack Obama wins the presidency. Are you confused yet? Just hang in there with me because there's something to this that matters. Then in 2011, Michelle Bachmann wins the straw poll. That's the beauty pageant by 1 point. Rick Santorum wins the Iowa caucus, gets the delegates. Mitt Romney wins the nomination, and Barack Obama beats him in the general election. That was another bad year for the Republicans. All right. Here is why Republicans are balking. First of all, you can bus people in from out of state. Karl Rove, that insidious political genius who is not our friend, he paid to bus people in for George Bush the Younger in 2000. And he defeated everybody. And that made him the instant front runner. Gave him the name recognition, gave him the momentum, gave him the mojo, gave him the juice, the fundraising ability, all those things. And so he went on to win the caucus, to win the nomination, and to win the presidency. So people kind of hold that up like, oh, this is really important. And again, at other points in history, it was important. It was important for, well, actually, which kind of funny, way back in 1979, George Bush the Elder won the straw poll. He won the caucus. And then President Reagan got the nomination and got the presidency in 1980. But you can see how all the players who are key end up being up there at the top. Now, here is what Michael Huckabee said, who has participated in straw polls before. He said, and I quote, "Conservative and hard-working Iowans want a strong and principled conservative Republican nominee for president who represents their values. I have concluded this year's Iowa straw poll will serve only to weaken conservative candidates and further empower the Washington ruling class and their hand-picked candidates." I have to take a break, but what he said is actually very critical in this discussion, okay? Because a lot of people are like, well, why does it have to be Iowa? What's the big deal about Iowa anyway? Listen, if the Republican national leaders, okay, the elite, the money people who don't give a darn about babies being butchered, about the sanctity of marriage, they're cowards when it comes to Islam. If these people get to determine the place that Iowa holds, it'll be at the back of the bus, and then it's going to be in New York City or in Los Angeles where the Republican momentum is going to be developed, and it will never be a pro-life conservative again in our lifetimes. They would love nothing more than to break the strength of Iowa, because Iowa is the heartland. They don't want the heartland playing such a critical role. This is what Mike Huckabee is saying. They want the moneyed elite to coronate Jeb Bush. And by the way, is Jeb Bush going to be there? When I come back, I'll tell you who's skipping this year's caucus. I have been a leader in the pro-life movement for 30 years. And sadly, we have not prevailed in our goal to make it a criminal act to kill an unborn baby. There's reasons why we have failed. I wrote this book, A Humble Plea, to Catholic bishops, to evangelical clergy, and to lay people, explaining where we went wrong and what we have to do to prevail. We've made this available as a PDF online for free. I encourage you to go and download your own copy. Why does a nice guy like me keep getting thrown in jail? I have been arrested almost 50 times and spent over a year of my life locked up in various prison facilities. And I wrote a book, many books. In fact, one of them is called Why Does a Nice Guy Like Me Keep Getting Thrown in Jail? It's a theological work, answering those who say that the church should not be involved in politics or that we should retreat. I encourage you to get it. In fact, get one and give it to your pastor. $4 million. That's what one Republican said it took to effectively fight and participate in the Iowa straw poll. All right, a non-binding, non-legal event. It's just a Republican beauty pageant. Not the caucus, not the primary. $4 million. Now, that number seems outlandish to me, and I think it's high. But here's the problem. It's about bussing people in, paying for their hotels, paying for their food. Are you with me? That's why Huckabee is saying, no, I'm not even going to participate, because it allows the moneyed people. Jeb Bush could be coronated there like his brother was. Remember, George Bush, the younger, won the Iowa caucus because Karl Rove got the idea to just bus people in from everywhere. So if Iowa would change its rules for their straw poll and say you have to be a registered Republican in the state of Iowa, they might have a better chance of getting people to come. All right, let me tell you how ugly it's getting. One of the leaders in the Iowa Republican Party said, judging by the intensity in the voices of these county leaders, campaigns who make the decision not to attend the straw poll at all do so at their own peril with these influential leaders. He said basically, if they don't show up, that we're not going to work for them in the caucus. We won't be volunteers for them. So then that resulted in one of the Republican big shots to write a rebuke to him. He said, unfortunately, not all Republican leaders have figured out that our goal is to nominate and elect the best candidate to win in 2016. It appears that not everyone read the memo that we must win in 16. Well, this is their nonsense. See, that's the Republican nonsense. We need an electable candidate. Really? Like Dole? Like McCain? Like Romney? These pathetic leaders at the Republican national level want to have a hand-picked, winnable candidate who's going to be a loser. All right, I'll close with this quote. This came from one of the Iowa Republicans. All a candidate really needs this year is a plane ticket to Iowa, a hotel room for the night, and the boldness to face 20,000 Iowans. If that can't be done, if they can't do that, how can we expect them to face ISIS? Ooh, it's getting ugly. And by the way, it's Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, and Mike Huckabee who have all said they're not participating. Iowan Republicans, change your rules so that they don't have to fund this and so that it's just locals who can participate.
you.